Northerly the leader. Old Comrade down the outside. Northerly shows the way from Old Comrade. Sister Patricia, Corporate Bruce and home run. But Northerly, Danny Miller coming away. And Northerly wins the railway from Old...
Here's Lucky Gray coming down the outside now. Godspoken's got up on the fence. Mr. Moet though hits the front. A boil over. Mr. Moet first up. He's won the railway from Lucky Gray. Not sure about third. Playing God has spoken. Rosie Rocket. What a win it's been by Mr. Moet. Won't the Corks be a popular? I don't care. I love her eyes and her wild, wild hair. Terrific down the outside. Platinum Rocker and fire up. Fifi stride for stride. Platinum Rocker, fire up. Fifi, Lucky Gray. Lucky Gray on the outside. Swamp them, gather them up. It's another one for Lucky Gray. Lucky Gray's got home to win his second railway stakes from either Platinum Rocker. Scales of Justice, and the Durban Demon has kicked him away. Scales of Justice led 3 lengths to Good Project. Perfect Reflection, but Dougie White's going to win it on Scales of Justice. It's a mighty West Platoon. He's coming down the outside, and so's Regal Power. Regal Power levels up, grabs the lead. It's Regal Power. Regal Power on the outside. The Wizard has done it again in the railway. Here comes Inspirational Girl. She's starting to thread her way through the field. Inspirational Girl, Pike under hands and heels, ranges up, grabs the lead. It's a winning hat trick for the Wizard and goes. Pike's hardly flinched, 150 left to go, and the Hot Pot storms up, grab the lead. This is all over, it's all over bar the shouting. The Empire reigns supreme. Western Empire won it by...
And now on PG Podcast Network, it's time for the year-round Carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Ralphy.
It's week 3 of the Wild Wild West for us. Thanks so much for getting our preview edition of Northerly Stakes Day. Vince Accardi from Daily Sectionals. Morning to you.
Good morning, Ralphy. Yes, Northerly Stakes Day. Beautiful.
Out of the blocks here. So, Ascot now. The rails edging out to 9 metres. How do you expect the track to play?
It's going to suit the horses on pace, Ralphie.
Yeah.
They're going to be straight in the lanes, and probably those first 3 or 4 lanes are going to be the most prominent. And if you're on pace or in that lead pack, you're definitely going to have an advantage, for sure. Of course, there's always a situation if you get that sort of upside-down pace that may help those midfielders, back markers. But just looking at the intel, it's clearly indicating on pace big advantage.
All right. Well, in the main race, the Northerly, which we'll obviously start with,
yes,
the leaders who are on pace, they're all at big odds. So race shape's going to be vital. But how fast are you expecting the likes of Maricino to go?
Well, that's the critical point, isn't it, Ralphie? That horse there. What's it going to do? +1, +3, +5, +7. That's all in this horse's wheelhouse.
Particularly from wide.
Yeah. So realistically, to come across +3 to 5 wouldn't be unrealistic, given that there'll be good speed in the ground as well, Ralphie. So it should be a solid run pace. Now, at the moment, I've marked it average. And this is, of course, if Maricino doesn't get away as quickly and things don't happen, then the fallback position doesn't look as bright. It looks like a lot more orderly, funny enough. It's just so crazy. So it could end up being a lone leader as well, Ralphie.
All right, so we'll have a look at the various favourites here, and I suppose the overview to say here is that there's really 3 different form lines. The railway, as you'd expect, there's attrition that's come across from New South Wales, and there's this filly Storyville. Now, William Pike, I'm just reading an interview here on RaceNet here. He said it's a good challenge to ride at 50 kilos, something in Australia I enjoy doing to prove I can still do it. I'll get it done. It shouldn't be a problem right now. I feel fine. I'm just a little hungry, and I'm just a little angry as usual. So he's pushing himself to ride at this weight, and this is obviously a horse on the rise. Twice he's won this race on a 3-year-old filly, so he makes it count when he gets down to the weight. So how does she stack up with the rest of the field, Storyville?
Well, if we look on just current profile in terms of performances, that last start, it's made that next step, Ralph. It's gone from 1.6 lengths below benchmark to last start, plus 1.7. Top 4 ranking, very solid. It was a good pace as well for the mile, Ralph. I mean, this horse was travelling half below benchmark off a speed that was 9.1 above. The closing sectionals going 4.1 above between the 8 and the 4 and 3.5 above last 400. They're all solid, not like over exciting, but what was exciting was the only runner all day that actually made an impact in the lanes. Other horses didn't have anywhere near the same sort of performance levels when they got into those lanes. They couldn't do what this horse did. So I feel there's some hidden merit here with this horse, and it may just take another leapfrog up. And you can just see, look at the ground that it made up as well in that last run. It was just huge.
So what's interesting with her, and I suppose we'll get to Democracy Manifest as well, drawn inside, to date, hasn't shown a lot of speed in her recent runs. When she started her career, she wasn't on pace of those. So what do you think she'll be able to do, given, as you said, Maricino's going to fly along out in front of himself?
Well, realistically, Ralphie, if we sort of just take last start as being a good gauge, potentially benchmarks what it can travel at. And that, as crazy as it sounds, puts it in its zone. If they're going +6, +8, then this horse is going to be 6 to 8 lengths off them, maybe 9. And it came from sort of almost 10 lengths off them last start. And it's been storming home, Ralphie. It's been absolutely storming home. So when I look at it from all those perspectives, I don't see that as being a problem either. And the inside, well, yeah, of course he's going to need a little bit of luck at the right time to get out, but I'm sure that'll come because they'll fan, as they usually do. They're going to fan.
And then it's one thing to say on the clock because it's a very easy caper if that's all it was. But this is a filly in just her second prep. It's had a lot of racing sort of back to back. 10-day break, 17-day break, 11-day break, 1 week back up now, 2 weeks to this race. What's your confidence level? I know the caveat obviously is this such an outstanding camp that she's got one more, not just running her, but an opportunity to probably go to a new level, which I would assume she would probably have to do tomorrow to win.
Well, if there wasn't a big step from one run to the other, I'd say we might have reached the limit, but there was still a gap. It was like 3 lengths from one run to the other, Ralphie. And I just sort of sit back here and say, wow.
As in race-to-race improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could still find that next step, but does it? Or does it just have to run to that performance of last start? So I just sit there and say, well, at the moment, if you just run to the performance of last start, you're top 4.
Which is a good starting point.
It is a good starting point. But now if we look at all those other mechanisms that you talked about, does that make it a good betting proposition? That's a different situation.
Yes.
But I'm just scoring on merit, performance. I still can't find the hole from that perspective.
All right, so before we get to the Perth form, let's go to the attrition form. He was fantastic when he won the Hill Stakes 2 starts back in a brilliant ride at Rose Hill. Didn't really get much of a look at it. Bo Mertens goes back on. He's got that great strike rate with this horse. Had a bowl along barrier trial, which he did nothing actually, but that probably doesn't matter for a stallion. When he switches on in race day, that's the important thing. So his talent level going into this, given that you've got an IVR forecast at the moment to get on the podium with just 1.4 lengths above benchmark for Group 1.
Yeah, well, I feel this horse's last 2 starts have been stunning. I mean, last start, even though it was defeated, look at the pace that the horse went at. It went at plus 7.2. Now, from a historical point of view, that's a really big ask that horse had to produce. Never gone that fast ever, especially at the 1800. And if you look at the run before, at 1900, plus 3.2. Again, I felt this was probably more of a orderly scenario in terms of the speed that it travelled at, around that 1.1 length below benchmark. Even the last 400 with the plus 5.7. Maybe if you look at it from the prism of the closing speed, if attrition and Storyville were in a similar position, although I can't help but feel that perhaps Storyville will be behind attrition. I'm not sure if Storyville can get past this horse if it can relax and breathe and run a lot closer to what it did at Rose Hill, or even like what it did at the Valley, Ralph, around that benchmark range. The close +6, +5.7 is the 2 runs leading in, and had the reverse on the last start. All that could have done to the horse, in my view, is got it super hard conditioning, from a race point of view. Couldn't be more match ready than what you need to do for this race.
Yeah, funny. You look at the Moonee Valley, last at a field of 4. Well, you got Mr. Brightside Nantino over in Hong Kong, and Pride and Jenny had her very best that night.
Yeah, and you can just see the performance pretty solid, really, when you look at it, Ralphie. I couldn't score the horse anything less than a 1.2.
Yep.
It's probably worthy of more than that, but the reality is if it's settled in well over there and turns up parading in the right way, they've made definitely the right decision coming to this race. This will be a major opportunity for them to strike victory here.
All right, so we get to Super Smink, and this is where, oh dear, Vince, I didn't take the $12. It's pretty much $12 now about. But when we put her in Sizzlers, it was pretty obvious that it was a pretty serious run in the railway as far as what we wrote at the time, and then I'll get you to compare what your thoughts are here. This is from the Doncaster, the railway, 1.8 lengths above benchmark, ranked third on the day. Another dynamic performance after conceding back to last from the wide barrier, minus 3.8 at the 800 was 7.6 lengths from the lead before 1.8 mid-race. However, her blistering 8.7 last 800, which really impressed. That was the second best last 400 and 200 of the day, the best of her career, while inching her PB up from 1.6. So really at the time, it seemed like a stunning run. Now that you've got a chance to compare her with the rest of the field, how's she line up?
Well, this horse is just it's creeped up on me in terms of what its real potential inside is. The last run was probably the biggest signal of them all. Plus 1.8, 3.4 lengths below benchmark first section. That's decent. 1.8 above between the 8 and the 4. 8.7 last 400. And then even the run before, if you look at the combined last 800 metres, 12.3. This horse has got some serious motor, like a very, very serious engine. And I'm just sitting back here, well, okay, let's say you're running 1.5, 2 lengths below benchmark. We just talked about the other two. So I'm just looking at all these horses. They might be all close together. Who's got what? Well, this one's showing serious sustained speed. If this horse had to go 1,000 from home, well, you almost want to be on this one compared to the other two because it's sustained speed over the last 800 metres. When you look at a number of runs, it's done at multiple occasions where it's broken the plus 10 combined. And I'm just sort of sitting back here saying, well, you're probably going to peak tomorrow, exactly when you need to peak. And I cannot fault this horse either, Ralphy. And this stable, obviously, they're very, very good in terms of getting them ready for big races as well.
I took a good look at Chris Parnham's city stats over the last 6 weeks or so, and gee, he's really in the zone.
Another big plus, isn't it, Ralph?
Yep.
Drawn well as well. So the key for this horse is going to be where it gets him running. It typically likes to sit 6 to 8 lengths off him. If there's not a lone leader and there's a high power group, I just feel everyone's going to be dragged up in speed. They might be holding their position 6 to 8 lengths, but they're going to be dragged up. So what I'm looking for is, can the horse cope if it's asked to run somewhere around benchmark -2 through the first half of the race? And my instincts, just through the data analytics, is sort of communicating, all right, well, maybe on the low you've got a combined +8. And if they go a couple of lengths softer and they're still travelling +5, then you're going to have an 8 to 10 length combined last 800 metres, which I'd say it almost makes you the winner.
She's definitely deep in the race. So before we get to the one that's a bit left field, Democracy Manifest. Now, the bit that's out of the loop here is that Mark Zara's riding this, even though he's riding in Hong Kong on Sunday without a fight. So he's obviously got great confidence in what he thinks it can do, and that's what the key is. It's what it thinks it can do, because last start in the Doncaster, I said it again, in the railway, didn't get its chance to show what it could do, but he obviously showed him enough to please him. And what we always said was this horse is a horse who needs tempo and firm ground, and tomorrow he should get both.
Well, he will, and again, we only got to go back 2 runs to Randwick. The writing's on the wall there, but it's no good if it's going to be travelling at 10.5 lengths below benchmark, then it'll be no good because it'll be way too far back. But again, this horse here, when we look at it and just look at that line where it typically likes to sit 6 to 8 lengths from the leader, I still feel you can come from that sort of position. The wide swooping run's probably not going to help Ralphy, but it won't have to worry about that drawn inside.
Yeah, it's going to be some duck and weave stuff, but
that's it.
Such a big race assassin in Zara. If anyone's going to do it, it's him.
He's very capable, and he's combined last 800 metres just off that Randwick run 2 starts back, sort of shows the serious threat it is. I have to say, though, when the horse has been asked to run at an early tempo that's a lot closer to benchmark, this horse doesn't quite produce that sort of plus 10 range, but it definitely can do a combined plus 8. So another runner that's like right on the fringe, and in my view, has to be like a top 5 threat.
So the left field runner here is Zip Away, and it's blinkers again, and we just made the case for Super Smink. Well, he beat Super Smink this time last year in the Guineas before being beaten, what was it, a point, well, it was a 3-way photo in this race last year as a 3-year-old, which, it was obviously, it was a proper race there with Dom Tashuk and Zaki, and Bustler at the time was airborne. This time in was good first up, last start just fair. So will the blinkers be able to spark him back to his old form of this time last year? Because if he can produce it, the $21 is a steal.
Yeah, well, I looked at that first up run. Maybe I got a little bit drawn in. And now that I had the second up run, and it was, in my view, a little bit of a sideway run. Now, it could have also been a situation where it could have done with that race in terms of making it more battle-hardened. And then I look at, it depends on how you assess that run that it had at 1,800 metres. Now, it might have been at the end of the campaign, which makes sense to me when I look at it and say, well, you had to sort of take that position into the campaign. And then they came to Melbourne and the horse just never delivered. I'm just sort of sitting back here, Ralphy, and asking myself the question, okay, well, if you run right up to that Ascot run...
Are you talking about this race last year?
Yep.
Yep.
And you look at the field, is Dom to shoot Zaki better than the few horses we just touched on, or is it just as good as them? Now, we know Zaki ultimately sort of turned out to be a level behind.
Well, he was at the end of his career. That's
he was. And then there were other horses in there like El Safina. We've seen that come to Melbourne. We had a good level of insight. And then, obviously, we didn't know, I didn't know personally, where's Bustler going to really end up? So I reckon I might have got a bit sucked in on this horse, Ralphy, in the sense that I just thought this horse could just dramatically leap up and we're going to see some huge new levels. And if I take on face value last start, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. So is this your range now? Are you only a +1? As the blinkers again, what's that really going to be there for? Are they also having concerns that the horse isn't delivering?
Yeah, because as we've often said, blinkers can be today's the day, or sometimes just a sign of desperation.
I'm giving it respect because I have to still respect that 1,800 metre run. And I felt that it came at the wrong time for that horse then. They were just shooting for the stars. And maybe with the long break, this has just needed the time. And we're going to find out because the potential's obviously there. And you're either going to, the bubble's going to burst, or it's going to take that big leap and announce itself as a horse that's got that serious capability.
The headache horse for me is Light Infantry Man. Now, It started $3.50 last start in the railway. It was against most of these, as we said. There's pretty much only 2 other horses that are outside that railway zone. Didn't do a lot. They rode it midfield. It was from an inside draw. What about this? Drawn wide, Ethan Brown's probably going to say, well, I'm not going to die wondering. I'll roll forward with Maraschino and be up there. We at least will probably get to find out what he can do, because this is a horse who's shown potential, probably hasn't quite put it together, but gee, there was some confidence for him in the market last night anyway, win, lose or draw.
Yeah, so
And it's
I can't get that I can't get the image out of my mind like it looked like a greyhound.
Yes.
It's a very bad sign, Ralphie. Now, maybe it lost a hell of a lot of weight going across, and now it's put it back on. So if it looks the same as it did last start, like I don't know what price it is now, but it's no hope. It's absolutely none, because, like I said, it paraded like a greyhound. It was very, very thin, extremely ribby, and in my view, miles over the top. Not a good sign, and the horse ran like that. And this is not easier. This is actually tougher, because it's 1,800 metres and there's going to be a good level of pressure. But it could possibly be, Ralphie, that the horse lost weight. And maybe in this last 14 days, it's been able to put on to look like it had to put on 20, 30 kilos.
Yeah, and sometimes, an animal
it can happen.
Could not travel well, and then get itself back on track. So.
Absolutely. So that's always possible. So the yard's going to be the answer. But besides that, he's there, but he's not there.
All right. We'll touch on race 9, of course, because it's a quaddy leg there. Sunlit Sunlit looks a bit of a runner. Sunlit Fresco.
Yeah. Well, if you just sit back and have a look at where this horse stands in the totem pole and what's needed, this isn't a race where you need to run, firstly, some whopping type of performance. And this is very, very lightly raced. And all I'm seeing, Ralphie, is improvement. Prep to prep, campaign to campaign, from its very first race start, and we're looking at each of the first up runs, the horse has made an improvement of around 4 lengths. And then it sort of franked it at Bunbury last start, when it actually turned up and improved dramatically again from first up to second up. And mind you, the intel was indicating that as well. If you look at that first up run at Ascot, it went out at a good speed, major drop off over the last 200 metres, lost almost 3.5 lengths of velocity. That's all conditioning. And even last start, Ralphie, I feel that the horse dropped a fair amount of velocity as well over the last 200, and that's because of unbelievable what it did through the first 2 sections. +2 first section, +7 between the 8 and the 4 before weakening overall. And I'm just sitting back here saying, well, you've just shown more versatility, huge sustained speed. This is a riser, and I'm just sitting back here saying, well, a repeat of that last run probably wins you the race.
Yeah, and it'll come across, and sort of the Parham brothers look like they'll control the speed with Richenko. Can you forgive Richenko for its last run? I mean, it was deep in the market, but it led and seemingly was pretty plain.
Yeah, I thought it was very, very plain.
Yeah.
There was just no finish. And I look at the run before that and say, well, if you were flattened off that run, we got problems.
Yep.
I just suspect the horse is looking for more ground. Coming back to the 1100, I don't see how that's going to help the horse. But here it is, 28 days between runs. Maybe they're looking for that freshening process to be able to get it to engage.
And King's On and won at the same Northern meeting as Sunlit Fresco did. How does it line up from a different race?
Well, very solid as well, Ralphie. From a 1,000 metre point of view, it was excellent. But we're up 100 metres, and you just sort of sit back and say, okay, well, how do you feel this horse is going to perform at 100, at 1,100? I don't know, Ralphie. I look at the 1,200 metre profile and saying, well, you were absolutely on the floor over the last 400 metres. So it's the first 400 which is going to be the key to this horse. If they engage in any type of speed and be like they typically want to be, like hard up there and actually put a little bit more pressure, I just feel it's not going to have it over the last 400.
All right, we'll leave that there. We'll, of course, talk business tomorrow from race 7, the Towton Cup, a listed race, usually a bit of a Perth Cup build-up here. Buckets Ridge was poor last start after being good previous start. Pikey sticks. What's the case for Buckets Ridge?
Yes, Buckets Ridge, eh? The run 2 starts back, where it produced a 1.3 at Northern. 4.2 lengths below benchmark early, plus 5.1 in the middle, plus 3.9 last 400. Very strong. Last start, up 200 metres. I felt like, from a race pace point of view, this horse is going 12.2 lengths below benchmark. No favours. In absolutely the wrong spot. The way it closed, though, full of running. Plus 2.5. The mid-race move was like 14.7 and plus 2.6 last 400. Huge effort, but just, in my view, not a good setup in terms of the pace through that first half. They should have been closer than what they were, and had they have been, I feel that there would have been a very different outcome in terms of the overall performance. Now, the 2,200 metres, I just feel it's ideal, and this horse is now ready for that, and probably ready to be able to handle a better pace.
As I said, it's a Perth Cup build-up, but then if you look at the pattern of this horse, last prep, won at Ascot, 2,200, 5th run in, tomorrow's 5th run in. You don't think that's a coincidence?
No, it's not a coincidence. and this stable probably wants to make sure that it's tuned right up. And if it's not running on the podium or winning, then they'd have to be a little bit worried about where they're going. But I don't feel me personally, I don't feel there's an issue, because the writing was already on the wall 2 starts back, that they've got this horse in outstanding condition. And tomorrow, we're probably going to see the re-emergence of breaking benchmark, and it's going to be a very hard horse to beat, Ralphy.
Yeah, absolutely. A few of these line up with each other. Last start, In Good Order ran second, Red Sun Sensation ran third, Sentimental Hero won that race, and then the previous start, Diamond Style beat them both. So, and that was Buckets Ridge was in that race when it wasn't as good. But then you've made it was $3.50 favourite, which of course makes the case for it, and which you just have as well via the race shape there. How do these others line up?
Yeah.
Sounds like you got a bit of confidence about Buckets Ridge can beat them.
Yeah, well then, look, if I look at like In Good Order and say Diamond Scene, for instance, they're the 2 horses that I was looking really closely at. I feel Diamond Scene, the question will be, okay, what sort of pace is that horse really going to go out at through the first half of the race? It is possible that this horse could stack them right up and go extremely slowly. That would probably help it, but it looks always like a sitting duck, no matter what happens. And then I look and say, okay, In Good Order, which is the horse you mentioned, Ralphie, no question, rock hard fit. And I just look at this horse's scenario. It has to definitely have a slowly run race, I feel, to have any chance of putting down like what I would consider to be a very strong last 400 metres. But I just sort of sit back and say, when I look at that versus, because that's what I did, I went Buckets Ridge versus In Good Order. I just feel that where Buckets Ridge is in the campaign, it's still spiraling upwards, and I just feel here they're just trying to hold. Yeah, with this horse In Good Order, they're just trying to hold their position. I don't know where the extra improvement's going to come from. So if you run benchmark, I don't reckon it's going to cut it.
And where does the stablemate to Buckets Ridge simply fit in after a couple of Ascot 2,200 wins, and then last start caught wide for the apprentice Declan Bates goes on?
Well, this horse had a stack of racing, Ralphie.
Yeah.
Absolute stack. But I'm not going to wipe the floor with the stable. They're here they are. They're doing the same strategy. Let's have 28 days. Try and put some freshness back in the legs. Right? That's all I can think of. And again, if you just take the line and you just do the litmus test against Buckets Ridge, I still prefer to be on Buckets Ridge.
All right, we'll talk business tomorrow. It sounds like there's a good case there for it. This could be a case of in race 6, is the rail position vital here? Because, gee, it'd be hard to say that Jetty's not going to again beat the two horses that beat last start, Profit Pocket and King Caviar, but rail out 9 and barrier 13, he's probably going to have to concede, and that might make it pretty tough for him.
Yeah, that could be a possibility of a challenge. Or are they going to chance? Is William Pike going to chance his arm and go more forward and be more aggressive? Because this horse is quite capable of going straight across and being in the front running line. And if William Pike feels that's necessary, because he's also going to be attracted to the inside lanes, because no one knows the track better than him.
Yep.
Then I feel he's going to chance his arm and come across. And I don't see that actually as being a bad thing to do. I actually see that as being a big plus. Now, if he doesn't and tries to be in a forward position, well, then he's got to slot in. That could be a bit of a headache. So, I don't know. Does he already have a pre-game plan when you're on a horse like this? I suspect you would have to. I don't feel you can just come out and say, let's see what happens. I just feel from that gate, you've got a commitment.
Yep.
Now, if the horse doesn't jump clean, then he's gone. He's going to have to go exactly what you said, back, and he's going to be looking for inside runs.
Right, because of the rail, where the rail is, it'll be.
He's not going to go
tough.
wide, Ralphie.
Yep.
No way.
But having said that, you got an IVR forecast of just minus 2.4, so that's talking a strong race.
No, it's not. This horse is. But if we just come back to this horse, Gianni, I mean, this horse is in unbelievable form, right, off that last run.
Yep.
And I know there wasn't a lot of pace early, 6.3 lengths below benchmark, but you have a look at the run-to-run, the 2 Ascot runs, the dynamic shift when stepping up 200 metres, and the close variation was massive. Like, it was unbelievable difference, Ralphie. I mean, the combined last 800 metres of last start's almost 10 lengths versus the run before was like 6 lengths below. Just looked like the horse hit top gear last start, and I'm saying, okay, is this what you're capable of doing? And I'm just sitting back here saying, well, you should be peaking. You should be peaking on Saturday.
Nice.
And getting to benchmark.
Yep, we put a big stamp on her in Sizzler, so hopefully we can barrack that one home. Race 5 in the program. What's the thoughts here with the favourite for the race, Kisses from Kelly? Which I've got to say, when I was doing my work, I thought, well, you're pretty tight odds for what you're doing on the quick backup.
Yeah, and only had the one run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at this trainer saying, okay, they obviously feel that's all they needed. I feel that they need one more run.
Yeah, and it had a bit of traffic, and gee, how often do we say, beware the unlucky runner, that everyone goes, oh, next start, but yeah, next start, 7-day backup, 1800 to 2200, not sure.
Well, not yet. Well, number one, it was pretty cruisy pace through the first half of the race, 7.8 lengths below benchmark. Maybe that can help you to have a quick backup. And could this horse be targeted for something else? Could that be going for the cups maybe, Ralphie?
Yeah, well, you'd think so, yep.
So if that's the case, then it makes a lot of sense. Quick backup, get another run, and then hopefully get somewhere closer to where you need to be in terms of match or race conditioning. Because on the last start, everything points clearly you need another run.
So on the early edition, you've got Beats of War on top, and at first you think, well, not sure, but then when you peel it apart, and like I said, duck egg fifth, but gee, that was an outlier race shape, that last one, where a couple of these come through, like Henchard and Accardi Knight, and that was just a crazy tempo up front, and it's something that you wouldn't often see, a race shape like that.
No, and I just feel it's not that the horse can't sort of handle that, but it depends on how you look at it, right? If you look at it and say, okay, this now brings you to your top, well, first of all, from a distance, you go, all right, 12 and a half lengths below benchmark first up. Very similar second up. You're not going to get excited, but then you've got this massive improvement. The horse has coming up with an overall figure of just -5, right? Which is, like, I don't get excited when I see that. But then when I look at the previous campaign and just see where this horse can end up, it's had a couple of performances where it's broken benchmark. And then I look at this run in isolation, the very last start. Well, that pace was brutal, Ralphie. What the leader did. I mean, come on, 17.7. What was he trying? He was trying to beat Pride Jenny. Yeah. And this horse has had to go pretty decent, plus 1.8. Had to really ratchet up the engine in the mid. And if you have a look at this horse historically, like from a mid-race point of view, that's a PB, plus 5.6. You are entitled to weaken, Ralphie. And when I look at the weakening over the last 400, it actually wasn't that dramatic. Lost about 4.6 lengths of velocity between the 4 and the 2, but then that last 200 metres, only 2.5. So just ground to the finish line. It was just a grinding finish. And I'm just sitting back here saying, well, you're probably going to improve 4 or 5 lengths off that run.
Which is a nice case at that price, $10.
Yeah, and you definitely have to respect this horse.
All right. Well, I suppose the overview there is a bit of a query on the favourite and a couple of others at a price. We'll talk business tomorrow. Race 4 in the program here, over 1,000 metres.
Yep.
Why won't Divine Belief just go to the front and win? Do we make that simple?
Yeah. I'm just looking at it now, Ralphie, and I'm just sitting here saying, well, yeah, here we are, 1,000 metres. Definitely not against the horse. I did sort of think just for a moment, maybe 1,100 would be interesting as well. But after that first up run, that was actually a tough run. And the horse was obviously very, very forward in condition because that drop off at the end.
Yeah,
I felt the horse had a bit of a fartlek pace in terms of the way that the race was set up. Dropped about 1.5 lengths of overall, I would say, match conditioning, which now has it primed up to, I feel, definitely break benchmark. But is it going to come tomorrow, or is it going to come the start after? Or is this horse now ready to put a couple together? So I'm just sitting back here. Well, you're the starting point. This is where we're at. If you run anywhere near that 2.4 at 1,000 metres, you'll win.
And it will roll along, and Twain's Angels 1,200 back to 1,100. I mean, for Divine Belief is 270 and Twain's Angels 350. Has it got the speed in its legs to beat it at 1,000?
No, definitely not. The 21 days would need like 50 days. 1,000 metres, massive negative. Absolutely massive, yep.
Beautiful. Okay. Low to moderate confidence in race 3. What's the case for or against the favourite? None so spicy for Pikey.
Well, first of all, I can see why all the WA people just worship Pikey, right? Because he must make a lot of people a lot of money, right? Just following him. I mean, you got to be very careful when you don't want to be with him, right? So just sit back and say, okay, well, this is a good starting point. Let's have a look what's he doing? Who's he on? And then you have a look at the form. And so he's on a decent runner. It's won its last 2 starts. He's still improving. From the first up run to the third up run, he's improved 5 lengths, Ralphie. And then, if that wasn't enough, I just look at that last run. Super slow down in the mid-race at 4.3 lengths and still produces a plus 5.1 last 400. Now, that's the sort of horse you could have even backed up 7 days later, but here it is, 17 days later. I don't believe we got a peaking performance last start. I actually feel it's coming tomorrow.
Beautiful. Well, it looks like a couple
and
should give a good sight.
Yeah, and it could improve a couple. What's that mean? Pikey's going to get an early winner.
Well, it might be earlier, according to the market.
Oh, no.
Because Keshi Boom has blinkers first time. Bit disappointed last start, but again, this is where we need to underline how the track was playing that day, because there he is. He went zoom, I'll go out to the lanes, and the lanes weren't there on the day. So tomorrow with blinkers first time, small field, it can probably, even though it'll get back because that's what it does, it will be within striking distance.
Oh, it's going to smash him tomorrow, Ralphie.
Okay.
Yeah, You know, you look at that last run. Have a look at it, Ralphie. Just look at it. -8, +4.7, +6.7. Does that look like a horse that might be having a problem? I don't think so. The problem was if you backed it, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's the chance.
Yeah.
The full recovery. I mean, the extra 200 metres on the way it's running is going to be gold, absolutely gold. And if it can't beat this field tomorrow, they need to just say this horse needs to have an early retirement.
Go north of the Broome, you reckon?
Well, I'd be going probably to Darwin, Banny Bay.
Well, it could be a nice little start there, races 2, 3, 4. So they're all reasonably tight, but they're all certainly deserving of their place in the market there. After we found a query on one of the favourites there, and I assume you won't be opening the betting race one.
No, but I did want to ask you, Ralphie, have you got an early price on that Keshi Boom?
Yeah, well, at the moment, Keshi Boom is mid twos.
Okay. So do you feel like it might stay there as well? Just like I know you like to monitor.
Well, I do, because there's a case to be made for 3 horses. So in a field of 7, rushing to the bar that beat at home last start, investment strategy's got a little bit of ability, as does Fast Flicker. So I thought, because I know exactly why you'd be asking me, because you'd be saying, well, if I can get set for the place for second, it sounds like an opportunity.
Yeah, I Ralph, you only got to go back and watch the video. Don't even look at the numbers now. There was not a chance in a million. Well, it sort of makes you sick when you see it.
Yeah.
And you just go, okay, all right. Well, redemption's like around the corner.
Good. Well, hopefully it's as soon as tomorrow. When, of course, we'll talk business. We'll get any more clarity on the track conditions after Vince has a chance to chat to a couple of people over there, and we'll talk business going through from a betting point of view. In the meantime, really appreciate you being a customer of Year Round Carnival, preview edition of Northerly Stakes Day.